Welcome and good morning, everybody. We're really thrilled to have you with us this morning as we dive into the webinar that we have the snappy title of Local Authority Loans for Fixing Homes and How Partnerships Deliver Household and Social Impact. So a real snappy title we came up there, but thank you so much for joining us today. We really do appreciate you taking your time out of your busy schedules. Today, we have a really excellent lineup of speakers who are going to share their insights, experiences and expertise with us this morning. So we're focusing this morning on the commission, the report commissioned by the Centre for Ageing Better that was compiled by Foundations. We're also going to be hearing from Somerset Independence Plus and from a recent Lendology customer. So we really do hope that you find this information inspiring and also that you'll have some great takeaways to take from the session. Before we get started, as always, there's just a few housekeeping rules. We've got only 1 hour to get through and we're already 3 minutes in because of our technical issues. So we've got 4 fantastic presentations. So if you would like to place any of your questions for our panel in the chat, I will then endeavour to do my best to make sure that we cover them all. I would encourage you to be as interactive as possible, so please do share your thoughts and engage with the presenters. And do feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat. So to kick us off, we're going to start with a very short poll. Hopefully you can now see the poll if that's working for you guys. And it really is just around giving you the ability to be able to see who else is on the call. Quite often you appear on these calls and you have no idea who the rest of the audience is. So we just thought you might find it useful to know who else is on the call, just in terms of getting your questions, really. So it looks like we've got a really good cross-section from across all areas. So again, when you're posing your questions, you know broadly who else is going to find your question interesting and that kind of thing. So we'll pop these items in the chat just so that you can see them. So fantastic. Thank you for your input there. So let's get started. And what I'd like to do is ask if Ellie Lister, the Operations Director, to kick us off, please, Ellie.
Brilliant, thanks, Em. Nick, thank you for joining us today to talk about your recent experience with a Lendology loan and a disabled facilities grant from your local council. We really appreciate that. To kick us off, could you give us an overview of your household and the works that were required?
Yeah, of course. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, so my name's Nick, and just kind of by way of my household, so I've got 2 children, 2 boys. My eldest son, Rudy, sadly has a condition called Duchenne muscular dystrophy. So for those of you who might not be aware, it's a very rare disease, affects boys. It's a genetic condition and it's a muscle wasting disease and it's a life-limiting disease, very sadly, which means over time it will just progressively get worse and just diminish his ability to walk and use his limbs. And he's currently 9 years old. In the next few years, he uses a wheelchair part-time. In the next few years, that'll become full-time. And as the condition progresses, he'll need more and more support at home, hoists and everything just to kind of make his day-to-day life as comfortable and as accessible as possible. So pretty horrendous thing to face as a family. And the works we required, we sort of found this out a few years ago, and we moved home with knowing this was kind of we're going to have to start to plan for this, and we bought a bungalow. We live in Devon, and some people on this call probably know bungalows in Devon quite often have steps in them, which always kind of confused us. But there were sort of steps in the middle of the property that sort of divide sort of the top and the bottom of the house, so it sort of splits the house in 2 effectively. So the works we really needed to do desperately to sort of kind of help him today, but also plan for the future, was to make the house, entering and exiting the house accessible. We live on Dartmoor, so it's not the flattest place on earth. So from the driveway to get in and out, there was a small step and a big step, depending on which way you came in. Getting into the garden was a big drop down. The bedroom where the easiest place for him to access was too narrow. The door to get in was very narrow. The space was too small for hoists. There was a ensuite attached to it. Again, it was it was tiny, so no way you'd be able to get a wheelchair in and maneuver it around. And then the living space for us as a family was at the other end of the house, up the steps. So the whole configuration was a challenge. The whole accessibility was a challenge. And really, we could see the quality of his life would become, more and more problematic. So that's the challenge. The work we had done was quite extensive. So we had, we basically, the lower half of the property, we reconfigured to make it fully accessible. So wider profile doors suitable for wheelchairs. We took the ensuite away and created a proper accessible wet room. We leveled the garden so that he has access to kind of outside space directly from his room. And then we created a family space where we could be together, so that he didn't have to be carried, or we had to kind of come up with some other way to get him into the other part of the house. We could kind of completely redesign, reimagined part of the property. So it was a big project.
Real, thanks for that setting the scene there, Nick. Sounds big and also costly. So I'm wondering how, without the grant and Lendology loan blend, what would have happened to the project?
I mean, we would have been really stuck, to be honest. I think the council was fantastic and it's really, really super supportive. But what was available to us would have got us probably halfway through the full scope of that work, if that. So I think we had two options. One would be to just abort plans and try and find another home and move the whole family again. Really also has autism, I should have noted before, so change is really difficult for him. So moving away from his school and his home was something we really wanted to avoid on top of everything else. So yeah, I think we would have had to move house, or we would have had to seriously compromise the plan. Probably just boiled it down to, okay, he's got a bedroom with a wet room, but the family room is separate to where he is. And yeah, just we really didn't want that as an outcome.
It wouldn't have had the best outcome, no.
No.
And it's great to see the flexibility of the councils as well, in terms of they were trying to work with you and us to get the right outcome with their funding. So how did you find the process of applying for the loan?
I was really daunted at the beginning of the project. You're quite overwhelmed as a family, and you're facing this really difficult, life-changing situation. And you don't quite know how you're going to make it work, but you just know as a parent, I've got to make this happen one way or another. But as soon as the conversation started with the council, and I could see that people just want to help and find a way to help, and they introduced me to Lendology, I was really blown away. The process, I think the way I describe it was just really humanized, and I was just dealt with as a person, as a human, and that took a lot of the anxiety away and a lot of the stress away. You have to go through all the due diligence as you'd expect, of course, because you're talking about large sums of money, and I think part of that, again, that gave me a reassurance, because I felt like I'm not going to be overcommitting myself to something that I can't afford, because that would be as bad an outcome as anything else. So I felt that my situation was taken into account, our family situation was taken into account. I was dealt with respect. The process was straightforward, and all the way through the project, just the communication was really straightforward. It didn't add any. I think the way I describe it is it took pressure and stress away from me rather than put pressure and stress onto me, which I thought was fantastic.
Brilliant, thank you. And final question, Nick. What difference has the changes to your property made to your family?
I mean, the team at Lendology know this, because I've told them. I mean, it's changed our lives. It's changed Rudy's life fundamentally, but it's changed our life as a family, because it impacts all of us. It impacts Rudy's little brother. So just that, to have that ability to, for Rudy's independence, so he's just got so much more independence in our home now, which then just has all these other benefits for him. But also as a family, just we can spend time together, be together, like most other families would want to be. But I think for me, the biggest thing is for Rudy's independence, and it's just, and as a result of the changes, just to see his personal growth has been fantastic. So he can wheel up to me in the kitchen there in the wheelchair and be involved in cooking. He can just decide to go outside in the garden on his own. He doesn't need us to help him do that and go and play with his brother. So it's all these tiny little things that probably a lot of us take for granted, if we're honest, just make a massive difference. So yeah, incredibly grateful, and it's worked great for us as a family.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Nick, for joining us today. I think as professionals, we can read a lot of reports, write a lot of reports, but hearing from the impact that the work makes on end users is absolutely fantastic. So we really appreciate you taking your time. You're welcome to stay for the rest of the session, or if not, we will catch up afterwards.
Yeah, absolute pleasure. I'm going to drop off, but yeah.
All right, I'll give you a shout later, Nick. Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Brilliant. Thank you, Nick. Really, really interesting for Nick to share all of the experience that he went through. And as he explained, there are challenges where it's not just about the functional thing, it's the emotional roller coaster as well. So really delighted that you were able to share that with us. So thank you. So what we'd like to do is now move on to Millie Brown from the Centre for Ageing Better.
Thank you. So what I'm here to talk to you about today is, so Martin will be giving a bit more information about our project, Fixing Funds and Fixing Homes. So just for a kind of reminder for those who haven't met us before, I'm from the Centre for Ageing Better. We're a charitable foundation, and we're set up in response to our rapidly changing population in the UK and the fact that we are living longer. And at Ageing Better, we believe everyone has the right to a good life as they get older, and that our whole society benefits and people are able to age well. We focus on 3 things, that is age-friendly employment, age-friendly movement, and what I'm here to talk today is age-friendly homes. So our ask basically as part of our homes programme at the moment are the UK government to develop a national strategy to fix cold and dangerous homes that are damaging people's health. Secondly, we want them to make all new homes accessible so that disabled and older people can live in a home that enables them to live independently and with dignity. And relevant to our discussion today is we want the local government to provide local one-stop shops on all aspects of home repairs and adaptations, with support on everything from finding trusted tradespeople and identifying what work needs to be done to how to finance repairs today and improve energy efficiency. We call this a good home hub. I know this isn't a new thing, but I'm going to talk about in a minute how all this work comes together to kind of meet our aspirations of this good home hub model. So why did we start thinking about why we commissioned foundations to do the work we're going to talk about today? Currently, nearly 8 million people live in a dangerous home, and actually approximately 2.6 million of those people are over the age of 55. Through our work previously, for example, the Good Home Inquiry, the biggest barrier that came up time and time again in our conversations with people that are struggling to make changes to their homes was this issue of finance. We also know it's a key barrier for local authorities. So some research we did showed that local authorities, while they used to be the key source of financial support for homeowners, landlords and tenants, there's been a withdrawal of over 2 billion in private sector grant funding by national government between 2010 and 2020. Therefore, this means the landscape is now very different. Our analysis shows actually because of this withdrawal from national government funding local authorities to carry out these works actually prevented the repair of over 600,000 homes and therefore unnecessarily endangering the lives of over 1 million people. In terms of moving towards solutions, as I mentioned earlier, we previously commissioned the Good Home Inquiry to understand the causes of and solutions to poor quality homes, and that this Good Home Hub an integrated and holistic response at a national and local level. As part of the Good Home Hub model, targeted financial support, including grants, loans, and other financial offers, is key to this. Specifically, grants, loans, and financing from both public and private sources that should support and encourage homeowners with different levels of ability to pay. And what we know from our research, and I'm sure you'll all agree here today, that at present, what is offered locally is a postcode lottery. And where comparable services are offered, take-up can be very significant between areas. So why did we do this research? We understood, as I said, the postcode lottery across of what is available. And there can be many reasons for that. A lot of the time it's due to funding. However, it can just be, for example, not having the freedom to develop innovative ways within local areas. So our aim was to highlight what works when designing and running finance schemes. Specifically, we have a focus on over 50s, of course, are aging better, but the finance schemes involved in this research were not tailored to older people. We just wanted to understand how they had the impact on older people. So therefore, we commissioned foundations to develop 5 case studies of 5 different areas who are supporting people to make changes to their homes through these different finance models. The research was published in 3 reports in April 2024. I know Martin's going to talk you through the Foundation's report today, but when we share these slides, there are some other resources on aging better, kind of going into more policy solutions. These case studies explored different finance models, such as discretionary grants, in-house loans, externally administered loans, area renewal schemes, and finally those support for those able to pay. And before Martin goes on to that in greater detail, I kind of just wanted to give you an outline of why we're doing this, so what we're going to do with this research next. As I mentioned earlier, this thing of a good home hub model. This isn't a new idea. We know home improvement agencies exist all over the country. However, this is about kind of putting a stamp mark on what a comprehensive coordinated local home improvement service looks like and aiding local authorities with the tools to be able to develop that. So at the moment, I was just saying, so with the Good Home Hub model, the point was that the finance is one part of that. And actually Aging Better are now moving part all of the elements. So if you can see here, independent information advice, practical support through the process, signposting to trusted tradespeople, our extensive research is now building on and hopefully creating a local offer so local authorities can adopt these things. And how we are creating that, we actually have a pilot called Good Home Links in Lincolnshire, which actually launched this week after many years of service design. And we're also evaluating 8 existing home improvement services across England in which we can show the impact of these services and hopefully increase the funding from national government to make sure the postcode lottery is reduced. The first outputs of that come out in October, and the more impact-focused outputs will be coming out in February. And so next slide, the final slide, as I said, Aging Better, these are the resources if you'd like to hear a bit more, and also please do look on our website to find a bit more about the Good Home Hub and also the Good Home Network for those from a local authority background. Thank you, and over to Martin, who's going to tell you a bit more about it.
Lovely. Millie, thank you so much. And apologies again that your camera has decided to fail like mine did. So thank you so much for going through. That was really interesting to show the development from the Good Home Inquiry towards these reports, because in the Good Home Inquiry, it was mainly focused on the homes and the challenges. And one of the ones that came out of that report was the ability to be able to access finance. So brilliant news that you involved the team at Foundations. And Martin, it would be really great to hear from you now around your input into the reports and how you found things. So thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to do a whistle-stop tour of this because I know time is precious to everybody. So the Aging Better brief was quite specific, really. It was to identify the approaches adopted by 5 localities, which I'll go through in a sec. They were very keen to have at least 1 district council representation within the sample of 5. And I fully understand why, because otherwise people working in district councils probably think a lot of the lessons learned from unitaries may not apply to them. It was important to set in some kind of context the strategic ambitions of each of the 5 localities, what the financial offer was, who administers the loans, because there's several options available. The key issues that local councils need to consider when they establish a loan scheme, and as been pointed out already, it's not just loans. Loans take the sort of high-profile sort of stance, but actually there's lots of other bits and pieces as well, which are very helpful for local residents. Next slide, please. So I'm taking these one at a time. For those, I don't know where the delegates today are coming from. Some of you may know some of these localities or even work for them, I'm not sure. So Bradford was, I'm doing this in alphabetical order. Bradford, unitary authority, large population, ethnically diverse, high levels of deprivation, poor conditions and low value stock. The finance model, and why we chose it, was because it's a combination of discretionary grant and capital appreciation loan. And in terms of overseeing the works, the local authority do offer an agency service, and the cost of that agency service can be included in the loan. The focus of their investment, they've chosen to remove hazards in the properties, Cat 1 hazards and some Cat 2 hazards, to improve health outcomes, because that was a very strong brief. Funding sources originally from the Regional Housing Board and sustained now by the Better Care Fund and the Council's Housing Capital. Loan administration undertaken by Sheffield Homes and Loan Schemes, Sheffield City Council in a sense, on behalf of a group of authorities not regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. And the other forms of financial assistance in this profile of Bradford within the report is how they import lots of energy efficiency funding. And interestingly enough, and it's coming up quite a few places actually around the country, the Director of Public Health meets some of the revenue costs for staff in regulatory services in areas with poorly managed private rented sector properties. And the point of that is it's a very sort of hands-on, intensive, area-based approach where they speak to the tenants and find out a lot of issues that are going on, and then they can refer to a lot of other agencies. So there's some added value in this approach. Next one, please. Eastleigh, this was the district council representation. I say a two-tier, population 136k, high numbers of older residents, low levels of deprivation, and relatively high cost stock. So it's very different than Bradford, for example. The finance model there was a combination of discretionary grant and loans, and the form of loans were that most did not involve a monthly repayment. Focus of the investment was to address health inequalities of difficult to identify low income homeowners dispersed across the borough. So that it was quite difficult for them to do the target sort of side of things. Funding sources, Better Care Fund for discretionary grant and housing capital receipts for the setup capital for the loans. Loan administration by Parity Trust, not-for-profit lender, regulated by the FCA. They administer loans on behalf of 16 councils in that scheme. And the other forms of financial assistance were, and I imagine many of the people who attended today do something similar, energy efficiency advice through the local environment centre, and that's what it's called, and credit unions. People forget about credit unions, but actually they're really helpful for very low levels of assistance and to rebuild and improve credit rating for the longer term. Next one, please. Leeds, large authority, strong local economy, but very high levels of deprivation. Some wards in the 1% most deprived in the country. Low value stock in some parts of the city, and they've still got 20,000 back-to-back homes. The finance model here was competitive bidding for external funding streams, and some of these schemes are quite interesting how they do it. I've just had a warning that my internet connection is unstable, so I may drop out of this, so I'll speed up. Some of the funding can relate to economic investment or job creation, and the Leeds Better Care Fund offers discretionary grants and loans to top up some of the community investment that's going on. So it's match funding in a sense. The focus of the investment was that it was an energy efficiency-led area-based renewal targeted as a rolling program of small area declarations with residents experiencing economic deprivation. So they're looking at, well, quite old-fashioned really. It's looking at whole streets or whole areas, small areas. Funding sources, housing capital, utility funding. Landlords were involved as long as they paid 25% towards the cost of the works. Financial administration was in-house. And other forms of financial assistance were Better Care Fund for discretionary grants and loans, and importantly, commissioning an independent home improvement agency for specialist advice, onward referral to other agencies, plus offer of support for self-funders, which includes an agency fee, which recycles money back to that agency. Next one, please. Somerset, I'm not going to say too much here because I'm going to leave it to Christian, so there's no point double counting our time, as it were. So I'll leave that. Next one. Wirral. People don't talk about the Wirral very much, which I don't really understand, because it's an interesting authority. It's got the highest internal disparity of any local authority in the country, between one half, which is occupied by the wealthy, lots of footballers live there, and the other half is very, very poor, low value, poor condition stock, especially in the PRS. The finance model here was discretionary grants and interest-free non-capital appreciation loans. So basically, if you take out a loan for 10K and you replace it and you redeem it 10 years later, it's still 10K. So there's no interest involved. Focus of investment, low income homeowners with significant health needs. Funding sources, Better Care Fund. Loan administration was in-house purely for their own authority. So it's not FCA regulated. And again, this is another one where the Director of Public Health meets the salary costs of what they call the Healthy Home Service, which advises residents in all tenures on a range of issues and makes onward referrals. Next one, please. Sorry, I'm going so fast. I'm just conscious of time here. Right, the learning outcomes were combining, everyone talks about loans. It's not just loans. Authorities can combine grants, loans, advice, information, etc., especially in low equity value areas. A local authority endorsed scheme, especially if it involves a voluntary and community sector organisation or social enterprise, seems to confirm or confer public trust, which is important in terms of take-up. You don't want to spend a lot of time developing a scheme and no one trusts it and they don't actually take advantage of it. Most schemes act as a lender of last resort to stretch available resources and fill what most people recognise as a gap in the market. Missed payments seem to be rare. Redemption periods are often shorter than anticipated. So if you're considering setting up a loan scheme, choosing an in-house or external administrator is a key decision. And you do need to be aware of the mortgage regulations for local authorities issued in 2005. And the purpose of those was to follow along with the regulatory reform order a few years before, to make it more real and to give an idea of good practice. So for smaller district councils, it's better to work together to achieve economies of scale to meet the management costs, whether loans are administered in-house, so you've got like a recharge arrangement with your finance colleagues, or externally with someone like Lendology or the Parity Trust. And people might think, well, we work differently than the other group of authorities. Well, experience has shown that the administrators are quite good actually at being aware of what each of the local authorities want to do, and communication is really important if you decide to change your housing assistance policy, but it works perfectly fine. You need to decide the purpose of the loans, types of loans, and the eligibility criteria. And in the absence of a successor to private sector renewal funding from government, which Millie mentioned, expanding support for self-funders is vital, because some people have the necessary funds, but not the confidence to arrange contractors or the knowledge to oversee the quality of work. And if most of the people on here on this call are from local authorities, most local authorities have got huge financial pressures. And if you're trying to develop a scheme, it's easier to secure political support at times of constraint for a loan scheme that ultimately will be repaid rather than a grant-based scheme. Final slide, please. So future issues. Funding constraints within local authorities, from what I'm reading since July with the new government, are likely to continue. The new government seems more focused on new build than maintaining the existing stock. And so local authorities are increasingly looking at loans rather than discretionary grants for top-ups to the mandatory DFG grant limit, which actually could have the effect of shifting resources away from addressing disrepair. One positive note of what's going on at the moment is that there is a sustained effort in trying to improve energy efficiency in existing homes and meeting net zero. So match funding could be a way forward in terms of targeting scarce resources. And for when you're doing energy efficiency work, Leeds and Bradford models, their selling point to partners is their local knowledge on the stock and resident needs. That's really valued, because otherwise utility companies can struggle to identify certain groups of people. There seem to be relatively few organisations with a social purpose operating in the sector, so the capacity may become an issue. Because I mean, both Parity and Lendology have advised me that since this report came out, there's been an uptick in terms of calls made, making inquiries. Do not underestimate the time it takes to establish a new partnership for loan administration. It needs to be done carefully and thoroughly. And from my point of view, if you speak to councillors, they like to know not just about if the process worked, but what the outcomes were. So what were the outcomes? Because they like good news stories. So you're likely to maintain that support for the scheme. Thank you.
Brilliant. Martin, thank you so much. I think we really could have gone on for at least an hour just on discussing some of the finer details of those reports. So we'll obviously make sure we send out copies of the presentations and links to all of these amazing reports. So thank you so much for taking your time to go through it with us at a high speed without your internet failing. So congratulations on that one as well. Marvellous. So what we'd like to do now is move on to our final speaker, Christian Trevelyan from Somerset Independence Plus. Christian, can I hand across to you?
Yep, certainly. Thank you very much. So, good morning, everyone. I recognise a few names on here. I recognise Jan from Bristol. So, so Somerset Independence Plus, we're a home improvement agency as part of Somerset Council, came a unitary in 2023. I'm the partnership manager who runs the home improvement agency and also the private sector housing offer across Somerset. Next slide, please. So as many home improvement agencies, and we touched on the home hubs, hopefully I've knitted this together well, but we offer a range of services, and we've been very involved with the Centre for Aging Better and what Martin has said around some of the case studies. And probably some of you will recognise some of these services that you offer because you probably offer similar services. In addition, we also offer hoarding support and home warmth and energy efficiency. And when we talk about some of the impact of our loans, we'll cover some of that in a bit more detail. Next slide, please. So in terms of our offer, we offer Lendology loans, and I've been one of the original advocates setting up the loan scheme back in 2000s with Emma's predecessor and also Bristol City Council and what was Taunton Dean Council at the time. We offer empty homes grants and loans, and also we offer free energy and fuel poverty advice. And we also have a strategic intelligence team within the service. Martin touched upon match funding by using loans, etc. We have a great pot of money, which is Hugs 2 home upgrade grant funding, which we got from government, which was 8.7 million. And alongside that, we use loans for energy top-ups for people who need solar panels, they need insulation and low carbon heating measures. So we tend to blend a lot of the funding that we've got along with what we've got with Lendology. Next slide, please. I want to give you a quick context of Somerset before I talk about the impact. So, as I said, formed on the 1st of April 2023, predominantly rural with a number of market towns. Unemployment is low, but they're on modest salaries with a lot of zero-hour contracts. Creates a lot of housing issues and affordability, particularly with Hinckley on our doorstep. 1 in 7 people are aged 65 and over, and 81% of people have a long-term health problem or disability. Our housing stock condition is declining, particularly in the market towns, with a high proportion of Victorian and pre-World War II housing. And 1 in 6 properties have a Category 1 hazard, and 1 in 3 with gas central heating. We offer a range of loan products because, as with all councils, we're finding our depletion of our capital resources. And although we use the Better Care Fund for repair grants, it's predominantly used for DFGs. So we need to make our money stretch further. So we offer a range of Lendology products, from DFG top-ups to repair grants and to energy efficiency, and some pretty hefty empty homes loans as well, where we've managed to bring some pretty big eyesores of 26 flats, for example, into use for using the loan scheme. And repayment was in sort of, I think, over a 2-year period. Quite a sizable amount of capital, but it's realising some benefits. Next slide, please. So in terms of the amount lent, so 853,940 over the period of time since we've been working with Lendology in the early 2000s. What I'm going to do very briefly is, if you don't mind, I'm just going to take over the slides a second and share my screen, because I wanted to share the an infographic which has been kindly provided by Lendology. Hopefully you can all see my screen now. Can everybody see my screen? No, it's coming up with a sharing error. Sorry, Emma. Technology.
You've got to love it, haven't you, Christian?
Yes.
We can make sure we include it with the pack.
Lovely. Okay,
Yeah.
so I can give a brief summary anyway. It's a brilliant infographic. So as I say, we're 853,943 £40 lent. The types of work: 33% has gone on roof repairs, 28% on renovation, 17% on windows, 11% on structure, 6% on boilers, and 5% on insulation. The customer feedback has been excellent about service. I think Nick summarised very early on about how it's no fuss for our clients. Lendology have been brilliant in helping our clients through the process, and assisted them without making things complicated. And when you think of families with complex needs, it's very challenging trying to manage the children's needs, and trying to manage the disabled facilities grant as well. We recycled £319,783 in 23-24, again, which is brilliant because we're able to reuse that funding. And also carbon savings through our impact assessments with Lendology. We saved 4,697 in the last year by household fuel bills by installing renewable energy. Now, Martin touched upon some of the work that's been done around case studies, etc. And what I was hoping to do is share some case studies with you as well. But in terms of impact, is what I'm here to talk about. We've got, because I said we're predominantly rural, we had a client in her early 60s who lives alone in the village. She's a homeowner with a mortgage, and she'd currently employed with a very low income, and was really struggling to carry out living every day. She had some very serious issues around her boiler and needed some works done to her home. So we had a lot of help through Lendology to help the individual. And since the impact of the works has been completed, she's been feeling warmer at home, reduced her energy costs, and have noticeably reduced the management of her day-to-day finances. She thinks if loan had not been available, she'd just continue to struggle to cope with a cold home and no hot water. Meant going to her daughter's home to keep clean, which is, destroying her independence and her confidence. And very quickly, Rowan and Marina, in their early 60s, shared ownership arrangement with the Housing Association on a 50-50 shared equity basis. They were struggling to carry out very essential repairs to their home, both unemployed, and they'd been made redundant from a previous profession, sustained a serious injury in a car accident. We helped them to provide a grant to improve their living conditions. We provided a loan of around £8,000, and then that increased to an extra £3,000 because there's other works they also needed doing. The roof involved roof repairs, window repairs, and insulation. At the end of it, in terms of the impact, they commented that they did not know how he would have coped without the support of the grants and loan provided. Imria felt total relief when the works were completed, so their leaking roof is a major worry for them. They no longer need the field to monitor weather forecasts and can relax in their own home. So it's been massively life-changing for a lot of these people in terms of how we've helped them. And we would never have had the capital in terms of our repair grants or for insulation measures other than through our hugs to help a lot of these people. And hugs, because it tackles the most vulnerable, means that from a loan perspective, the ones that are marginal couldn't be assisted through that grant from government. So again, Lendology have filled that breach and helped a lot of our clients to realise their ambitions around their home. And finally, around empty homes, through the loan scheme that we developed with Lendology, many people who are in unaffordable rented accommodation, because we all know historically house rents have gone up. Hinckley has added to that by increasing rents because landlords have been taking on people from Hinckley. As a result, what's happened as a consequence is that we've been offering these low interest loans where we've been able to then afford to provide affordable rented accommodation to many who never otherwise would have been able to aspire to that. And then there's a couple of final slides, if we could go to those, please. We touched on the Home Hub model, which we're developing in Somerset. And then there's one more slide, which I just wanted to show everybody. I think it's very important that when you develop your loan scheme, and I can't echo it enough, and Martin touched on it earlier, that when developing it, don't develop it in isolation because you've got a capital finance issue. You need to try and integrate it in with your services. And we've taken what we call a systems thinking approach by hovering out from the service and looking at it from a macro level. What is it we want to do with our services? And we thought very carefully about how we could slot loans into the system. And a couple more slides here, which I won't share now, but we shared via Ellie and the team, includes some of that systems mapping and how we work that. So hopefully it's a bit of a fly through. I know I could talk for England on this area, but I know I'm out of time. So I'll hand back to Emma.
I was on mute. Christian, thank you so much. Again, Christian had difficulties logging in, so we've had some real login issues because you're coming up as Ellie on my screen. So it's lovely to meet you, Christian. Thank you so much for taking us through all the work that you've done in terms of the loan scheme and also the Home Improvement Agency. It really is a good blend, and it was really interesting to hear about that knitting together of those two areas. So thank you so much. So I think we've heard from all of our speakers now. We have had a few questions come up in the chat, and Ellie, I think the first one was probably best aimed at you, was from Stephen around he was asking Nick whether or not his application was means tested, and I thought maybe you could take us through the response to that one.
Brilliant. Yeah. So in terms of the DFG policy in Devon, I don't have much insight into that. But in terms of the loan, we don't do means testing. We just look at the individual's affordability for the repayment of the loan. So people can have savings. They don't have to be on qualifying benefits to access a loan. We will just look at affordability based on FCA regulations and a common sense approach.
Lovely. Thank you so much for that. And we were also asked, and this is more of a policy question. So again, Christian, maybe it would be a good one for you to respond to. This one is the question was, would loans be available only to homeowners, or are they available to private or social landlords?
No, we offer across owner occupiers and private landlords. So we've been offering our empty homes loans, and also we offer loans to landlords where there's potential for enforcement action, where in the past we used to offer grants to do that piece of work. And some of those are secured through letting the property to our people on our home finder list, in other words, who are homeless. And in some instances, we're flexible where we don't require that. So at least we can try and pick up as many loans as possible. Lovely,
thank you. And we were asked, what's the typical loan rate to customers? We have put in the chat that it's typically 4% for the majority of the partners that Lendology support in the West Country. And again, that can vary across schemes. So usually, again, working with organisations like ourselves or Parity Trust, they're very clear on what the interest rate is. And generally, it's a fixed interest rate, which is not one you would expect from a loan organisation. The majority actually fix the rate based on who you are, which is one of the absolute marvels of this scheme. One question came into the chat: would it be possible to just have a loan scheme for green areas and green initiatives? And absolutely. Ellie, I wonder if you want to just talk through the 3 new partners that we've had join us in the last few months.
Yeah, sure. So clearly, with all councils across the UK declaring a climate emergency, we've had a lot of inquiries from councils just looking to set up a scheme to support people with moving towards net zero, reducing the emissions of their home. So we've just launched a retrofit scheme with the London Borough of Merton Council, West Yorkshire Combined Authority, which is our first combined authority who have joined. But it works really well because, as Martin said, it's about coming together to make the scheme more efficient. And also Cornwall Council are running a retrofit energy efficiency loan scheme as well. So what we do as a lender is we understand what the council are trying to achieve, and then we can advise on policy based on our experience working with Christian and the rest of Somerset and Devon over the last 20 years, and support with bringing those proposals to your portfolio holders as well.
Fantastic, thank you. And Alison, thank you for that wonderful question. How can we roll out Lendology model to other councils? You're 100% right. We would love central government to become involved and actually just look at the whole of the UK as a whole in order to provide this service, because it's clear from the report from the Centre for Ageing Better, it's clear from Martin's report in terms of what's happening across the country that it's happening. But if it was one centralised piece, it would give everybody a wider opportunity to access what we believe is absolutely a fundamental need for people in their homes right now. A lot of focus has been on social housing and those areas, and the reality is those people with homes are struggling to maintain them, and the longer we leave it, the harder the role's going to get. So I think we would be very open to talking to, again, as Martin put in his report, those districts that might be interested of looking at how we can collaborate and how we can work closer and how we can help solve those issues for people. I think that would be our wish list. I had a couple of questions here while we just check back in the chat. But Millie, you mentioned that Lincoln has just gone live. I wonder if you wouldn't mind telling us just a bit more about how that has come about and what the work is. What it's going to show you.
Yes, so it's Lincolnshire. We have been working with Lincolnshire as a strategic partner for the last 3 years. And when that partnership was formed, we identified that their kind of ambition was to improve the quality of homes across Lincolnshire. And as part of that, we basically worked with them for 2 years with a service designer, understanding exactly what the need was in the local area. Moved forward, actually. So a lot of our good home model, it's not necessarily creating a new service. It's about redefining what already exists. And bringing together existing services to work more as a cooperative. So, for example, Lincolnshire is a 2-tiered district, and while the kind of main kind of understanding and strategy sits at Lincolnshire County, we've actually got buy-in from all 7 district councils, and therefore we're hoping that this thing of a postcode lottery, at least within Lincolnshire, the offer will be more of a blanket offer across Lincolnshire. As I said, it's a long project, but actually in the last 2.5 years, we have got from this sounds like a good idea to actually the pilot launching as of this week. It's a staged approach, but as of this week, the advice and casework service has started, the hoarding service has reconnected with that, and the energy advice service has reconnected with that. The ambition is it's a 1-year pilot, and I should just mention here that as part of that, we have commissioned London School of Economics, who will be doing the evaluation for us. So hopefully at some point we can kind of talk a bit more about that. But yeah, in terms of finance, they will be largely relying on DFG to start with, and then they'll kind of be evolving when they can see the need, understanding kind of who are the beneficiaries in that area.
Brilliant. Fantastic. And 3 years, it may seem like a long time, but the reality is this is the problem that's just increasing. And I think
yes.
You're there as a beacon for all of us to look at. And let's get you back with the LSE report, Millie, and hopefully we'll have a camera working in 3 years' time. Yeah. You never know. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Martin, you mentioned that the Leeds and Bradford models were really exceptional models. I know you've been. We rushed you through your slides, so if you're still available and your internet's still working, can you tell us a little bit more about what you found them as being exceptional?
Well, I think they have an advantage, and they're part of a city region and a combined authority. So it's tricky because you get bits of expertise within councils, but when you've got a combined authority, they're brought together, so you have economies of scale, and so there's time to look around for external funding sources. What they're very good at in those boroughs is that they have and it's not exclusive, obviously, to Yorkshire. There are lots of other exemplars around the country on this, but they have a really good understanding of where the problems are and the challenges are in their housing stock, what the problematic stock is, and where the external funding sources are. So the Leeds one was really interesting in the sense that they look at funding opportunities, tranches of funding that are available, bring this expertise together, and their selling point is the knowledge of the stock. So even though they're quite cash strapped, particularly in the Bradford area, it's quite a poor city really. They're bringing expertise rather than pounds and pence. So there's a revenue cost associated with it, but they're not actually bringing much money. In fact, Bradford don't bring any money at all to the table. So they're doing the engagement work with communities about, well, if you're going to upgrade your home, what is it you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do? And then they have sort of condition surveys to try and select, particular terraces or whatever for targeting. And what Leeds told me was that when they set this thing up, working on a terrace by terrace basis, it was quite what they call a slow burner. It takes time to get people interested. But then if people can visually see the impact, when they declare their next terrace or small area, even the landlords were queuing up to get involved and paying their 25% contribution. And obviously there's some discretion about stuff they can pay 100% contribution for if it falls out the spec of the scheme. But I thought that was quite an interesting way of doing it, rather than just trying to stretch the monies you've already got further. And because I noticed there was a question in the chat about lots of councils are broke, and that is an issue, which is why there's an increasing reliance on Better Care Fund for monies and borrowing bits and pieces away for various other purposes. But who knows? I mean, to be honest, you touched on it, Emma, that there's been a sort of political shift. If you've been around as long as I have, you remember in the 80s and 90s, it sounds like a sort of fireside conversation, doesn't it? But what I mean is that the government were very keen. They viewed the housing stock as a national asset, whereas now they're viewed as a series of individual owned units, and it's up to the owners to do something with it. And that model just doesn't work for some communities. They just don't have the wherewithal or the finance to actually do it for themselves. So sometimes it still takes organisations like Your Good Sales and local authorities to come together as a partnership to help sustain the stock. And I can't see that changing in the short term, quite frankly.
And it's not helping the nation's health at all, as we
No,
know. And
absolutely.
again, and many reports show that the health of the nation relies on the strength of its homes. And as your report showed, the depletion in, and as Millie covered, the depletion in people's living standards is just continuing as being eroded. So brilliant, thank you. There's a couple more questions that have come in from the chat. Ellie, there was one around the entry point. How do you access funding? Would you mind picking that one up while I have another look through and make sure we don't miss any of these real gems?
Yeah, sure. David, that's a really good question, and I think there are lots of different ways people will find out about the funding. It might be through agency intervention, so issues with mental health, hoarding, other community groups like energy advice groups that might be talking to people on the front line. So the councils themselves, we work closely with our council partners to do joint campaigns to raise awareness of the scheme. As we found out in our social impact report that we do every year, people don't just wake up one day and decide that they need a new roof. It takes about 6 years to make the decision on that. So it's about constantly reminding people that the scheme is there. We get a lot of people with word of mouth as well, because of the way the service is delivered. And then Lendology also offer a communications package as well. So we do our own sort of branding and marketing as approved by our councils. So yeah, it's very, very varied. Frustratingly, because we just want every homeowner across the UK to know, but as we've found today, it is a postcode lottery, sadly, and it's about targeting the right people at the right time.
Lovely, thank you. There was a question that said, is the funding available to a charity or is it available to individuals? And it is just available to individuals the way our loan schemes are set up. So the charity could support an individual to get a loan if that's the right thing to do. And another question was, what is the loan to value for purchasing? We don't get involved in the, again, our funding is not for purchasing of properties, it's more around the refurbing of properties. So I hope that's answered those questions. I think we've probably got to the point where I need to ask if there's any more comments that the panel would like to make. Oh, there's one new message that's just come in. Oh, it's a thank you. Thank you so much. Just to say thank you, everybody, for joining us this morning. Despite our IT challenges, we've soldiered on through, and I'm really grateful. I would like to say thank you to Millie, to Martin, to Christian, but most of all to Nick for coming on this morning and sharing with us the challenges that he faced with working through updating his property to meet his needs. So thank you all again for joining us. What we will do is we will make the slides available very shortly. Thrillingly for myself, this will then be available on YouTube, where we'll all get to look at it in the future and go, no, did it really happen? But thank you all for joining us today. Well, undoubtedly we'll have another webinar in the future, and keep watching the space. But thanks for your time, and we look forward to seeing you again. Thank you. Bye-bye.